What is up, y'all? Welcome back. Today I want to talk about a YouTube comment that I received on one of my videos and dive deeper into something that seems to have people in a fluster. Okay, so I did a video, I don't know, a couple of videos ago where I talked about the chart of accounts. The comment pretty much was saying or said that I lost them when I didn't include the functional expenses in the chart of accounts. Now, if you are new here, that is not how I do things, and it's not how I recommend other nonprofits do things, right? There is a very good reason why things need to be kept separate. And I'm going to go into that. And then I'm also going to kind of go into more detail about the benefits of not having your functional expenses tied to your chart of accounts. So first off, we don't want to crowd the chart of accounts. A lot of times I run these, income statements and you see multiple pages because there is an account for every single thing. And on top of that, you're also accounting for the functional expenses. And what ends up happening is there's 3 functional expenses, right? But then what I see people do is have duplicate accounts because they're trying to account for those things under each functional expense. So I'll give you an example. Let's say salaries. So I'm going to see 3 salary accounts on the P&L because there's going to be admin salaries, programs salaries, fundraising salaries. That's too much. 1, it just crowds the financials, and 2, it just looks messy, right? The idea is to have clean and simple financials, easy to read, because you also don't want to garner questions that, 1, you can't answer, but also that just make things more complicated than they need to be. Now, I want to take a step back because I want to talk about the purpose of functional expenses, right? We know that this is a requirement for nonprofits. The idea is that for every expense, we are able to show or tell, right, the reader, and also in accordance with GAAP, where these expenses fall in regards to their function in relation to the organization, right? And so when we think function, it's like, is this something that's administrative? Is this something that relates to programmatic expenses? Is this something that is based off of, your fundraisers, right? And so the reason that organizations need to display it like this also is because funders want to see it, right? Unfortunately, we know the whole notion that a lot of times they look at this report to determine how much they want to give an organization, and they want to guide where the funds go. And so I know sometimes too, some organizations try to pad programmatic expenses and reduce administrative expenses in order to show that they really need the funds, but this really needs to be accurate and accounted for appropriately, right? And again, it's a requirement. It is a requirement. And also when you as management or the board are reviewing these financial statements, you want to make sure that you know where money is going, not just the category, right? So not just, is it advertising? Is it marketing and communication? But also when we spent the money on said promotion or marketing tools, was this for a program? Was this for a fundraising activity? Like, you need to be clear on that too, because if you go a little bit deeper, the idea also is to know, like, are these things making you money? And that's the other piece, right? Because when you look at that crowded financial statement, right, and you have all of these functional expenses on there, can you even tell the difference between what one program made in relation to the other, or what one fundraiser made in relation to the other? A lot of times you can't. And so that is why I do not recommend that you pad your chart of accounts. And so I am going to go into the 3 reasons that you shouldn't do that, but also talk about why you should do it the way that I am recommending. So the first reason why you don't want to put functional expenses in the chart of accounts is simply because there are too many users, right? You have your management, you have your board, you have your funders. Now, if you are going for loans and things like that, you have the bankers, the creditors. Like, you want to keep things as simple as possible, and you don't want to give more information than is required or is needed. And so, like I said earlier, we keep it to natural categories. So when you think natural, think things like bank charges and fees, merchant account fees, salaries and wages, payroll taxes, individual donations, foundation grants, like very high level, right? Because what we really want to show is what are our funding sources, so where's this money coming from and where are we spending, right? So those natural general categories. The second reason is it gets messy and redundant. Keyword redundant, right? We don't need to have a P&L or a statement of activities that is 3 pages long. It makes no sense. And we don't need to see a P&L that has the same category listed multiple times because you want to put it under each functional expense. It's messy, it's redundant. And the other thing is, like, your financial statement is a presentation to the user. And a lot of times, how the same way we get dressed, might be going to an event and you get dressed and you want to look a certain way because you want to present a certain way. The same thing here. When I see a messy financial statement, the first thing I'm thinking is, like, who put this together? And then we start to think about what knowledge do they have about what's required from a financial presentation standpoint? Like, has anyone looked at this? And so it starts to invite a lot of questions that you don't want to have. You want things to look simple, to look clean, to look clear, right? Because the one thing you don't want is for your reader to be confused, because confused means they probably ain't gonna give you no money. The third reason why you don't want to put your functional expenses in your chart of accounts is because you want to maximize the use of your accounting software. So of course, we are talking about QuickBooks Online here specifically. There are different ways to track different things, right? And when you set things up to be tracked in a way that is not only useful to the organization, but also useful to the users, you give yourself options, right? You are not limited. And that's really what I want for you, right? I want you to be able to run your reports in different ways depending on who you are providing the report to, right? And so, your banker may not need to see what's sitting in functional expenses. So why are we giving them all of that information, right? And if they don't know how that works, then there's a ton of questions that we're answering, right? That is not even applicable to this bank loan that we're trying to get, right? So we want to just keep things simple so that we don't invite all these additional questions. But moreover, the point of this third point is that we want to maximize the use of the software. Now, the best way to track functional expenses in QuickBooks Online is by using classes. Say it with me. Using classes. So here's an example. We know that there are 3 main functional expenses. So you would have 3 main or parent classes. So you're going to have administrative, or some people put general and administrative. We're going to have programs, and we're going to have fundraising. Those are your 3 main parent classes at a high level. Now we know most organizations tend to have multiple programs, or you may have more than one type of fundraising event, and you may want to track the expenses by program or by fundraising expense. By fundraiser. So you have your general administrative class, class 1. When you get to your program class, your parent class, you can also create subclasses, like the best thing. So not only can we see total what was spent on programs overall, but if we wanted to drill down even more, I can say, well, not what was just spent in programs, but what was spent in program 1. Or program 3, or program 5, right? Because each of those programs will be listed as subclasses. So you'd have programs as your main parent class, but then you can have subclasses for each individual program. So you can then have program 1, 2, 3, 4, however many programs you got, right? Same thing with fundraisers, right? If you know that you are throwing, a lot of organizations have like main events or main fundraisers that they run, and sometimes you might want to track it by that fundraiser. So you can have a subclass for your gala, or you could have a subclass for whatever special performing art events that you do every year, and you want to track ticket sales, or you want to track expenses for everything that you put out for that specific gala or fundraising event. This helps because it then gives you options. So not only can you run your statement of activities, just a clean one that doesn't include all that detail, but then you have the option to run your statement of activity by class. So now you have this breakdown that shows not just how much money we brought in and we spent, but then did we bring in a certain amount of money and spend a certain amount of money in this individual program, in this individual fundraising event. Now you have more details. And so depending on who you are running your financials for, who you are giving them to, who's going to be reading and looking at it, you have different options as to the reports that you can run. So you can give more or you can give less. When you put everything in your chart of accounts, you don't have an option unless you want to go through the process of exporting and then doing all of this manipulation to the report. But we don't want to do that. We want to make the system, that's the whole purpose of this. Like, we are tech savvy over here, tech enthusiasts. We want to make the system, the software that we are paying for, work for us, right? Especially when we know that it has the functionality, right? And so that's that. So you use the chart of accounts for your natural categories and you use your classes to track your functional expenses. Thank me later.